Planning a cruise can be both exciting and terrifying all at the same time, especially if you've never done it before. I'm Kyle. Today is May 18th, 2024, and my goal today is to help you out in the very early stages of your cruise planning. Now, this will be a brief overview of the top 8 things that I consider when I'm booking a cruise. But because every cruise is unique to the cruiser, these are just in a random order. Now, personally, I did put one in particular at the very end, and we'll talk about why I did that when we get to there. But don't look at this at the moment as this is the order you must consider every step of the way when planning a cruise. This video, because of the topics that it's covering, is geared more towards people who are new to cruising, especially those who have never set up a cruise at all. But hopefully some of you more experienced cruisers will get some use out of this as well. If this helps you, please feel free to share it with other people you think may get some benefit from it. But let's dive right on into it. I have made an outline to cover the 8 different topics, so I make sure I hit on every one of the important subjects that I think needs to be discussed. So we're going to start off with the first thing to consider. Again, this is not in any particular order. This is just one of 8. The destination. Where do you want to cruise to? Some of you have not put any thought into it. Some of you have put a lot of thought into it. We got lots of very popular cruise ports. For instance, the Caribbean. You have an Eastern Caribbean cruise. You have Western Caribbean cruises. You have Bahamian cruises that sometimes people call Caribbean cruises, even though they're technically a separate entity there. Then you have Alaskan cruises. You have cruises to Europe. You have transatlantic cruises. You have trans-Pacific cruises. All sorts of cruises. And each one of these different cruise destinations brings their own unique experiences to you on the cruise ship. Each cruise will have a different feel. Each destination will have a different rhythm of the cruise, and it can completely change the atmosphere all about. But destination. This is definitely one of the things that you want to consider. And if you're going to use a travel agent, which I highly recommend, that is definitely something that they will ask you about. Next topic is the dates of the cruises. Some things to look at here when you're considering when do you want to go on this cruise is what works for your schedule. What works for the schedule of other people in your party. If you're going on the cruise by yourself, this makes planning a lot easier. But sometimes people go as a family, and school might be a limiting factor on when you can go on a cruise. Next, holidays. Cruising goes around all year round, doesn't take a break for holidays. So some people find it exciting to take a cruise over a holiday. Some people want to be home with their family during the holiday. Going on cruising during the holiday also has other issues that come with it. Some good, some bad. There are definitely extra perks on lots of the different cruise lines, especially around like the 4th of July cruise or the Christmas cruise or Thanksgiving Day cruise, New Year's cruise, the big holidays. Lots of cruise lines will do something special for those, and many of the cruise lines don't even do it on just one particular cruise. Disney, for instance, will do a holiday cruise that goes on for multiple months leading up to the different holidays. Kind of like a Halloween decoration leading up to Halloween. A Christmas-themed cruise leading up to Christmas. And it's not just the 1 or 2 cruises that encompasses that holiday, but it'll be starting in November for Christmas. Can be lots of fun. Can also cause a lot of headaches with travel. So your travel plays a big part of it as well. But also special events and celebrations. Are you doing this just to go on a vacation? Are you doing this to celebrate some big milestone like an anniversary or a birthday or something like that? Or is it a graduation present? Something to celebrate. These can also be extra fun because pretty much every cruise line offers different packages that you can buy on top of your room to celebrate that stuff. Anything as simple as having a birthday cake or a anniversary cake in the room, or flowers and champagne to surprise your special someone, to the room being completely decked out in all sorts of celebratory gear. So holidays and special events and celebrations are definitely excellent times to go on cruises. Of course, there's also the people who want to go in the off-season time. Lots of times this is the hurricane season, if you're in the United States at least. This is, around that September time when hurricanes are popular. This has some added benefits. Mainly the pricing is a lot cheaper for these cruises. So this might be a time to try out some of the suites that you haven't got to try or any of that good stuff. It also comes with a lot of downsides as well. Cruising during hurricane season gives more opportunity for something to go wrong with your cruise itinerary. The cruise line does a fantastic job, no matter which cruise line you go with, at circumnavigating around different weather issues. But weather is sometimes super unpredictable, and they can't survive every single survive is a bad use of words there. They can't guarantee they will be able to make every single port. Sometimes you have to miss port because of weather. This is not only during the hurricane season that this happens. It can happen anytime. Storms can happen anytime. Just it tends to be more frequent during hurricane season. I will say though that during hurricane season, the chances of you being caught in a hurricane on a cruise ship is almost zero. They will steer around those. It's just the one-off storms that just kind of pop up out of nowhere that catches them by surprise. And sometimes, because of when your cruise is and where your cruise is, the destination might have tropical rain for an entire week straight. There's no way to bypass that. So be prepared if you are going during an off-season time, that yes, your prices will be cheaper on average, but you also need to pack a little bit of extra patience with you, because things can and probably will go wrong. Cruising is fun. Don't let that scare you away from it. Next, we're going to look at ports of departure. So for those of you very new to the game here, ports are basically where the cruise ships dock. And so that's where people get on and off the ship. So a port of departure, at least for us today, a port of departure is where your cruise starts from. And in the United States, there are a ton of ports. Florida is probably where most of you are going to cruise from for your first cruise. It's where the majority of cruises come out of. You have Port Canaveral, you have the Port of Miami, Tampa Bay has a port. There's a port up near Jacksonville, Florida called Jacksport. These are all super popular ports. Port Canaveral and Port of Miami are probably, I would have to double check, but I believe that they are two of the busiest ports. Have cruises coming in and out of there pretty much every day. Fantastic ports. Other popular location in the United States is Texas and California. California is very popular as well, especially for people going on Alaska cruises to Hawaii, stuff like that. You also have Seattle for those Alaska cruises. You got LA, San Diego, San Francisco for California. Texas has a few ports there as well. But each port tends to have its own destinations that it goes to the most. That's not to say you won't be able to go to the destination you want to go to from the port you want to go to. But for the most part, let's say you wanted to go on an Eastern Caribbean cruise and you wanted to visit like the Tortola or the Virgin Islands, that you would want to leave from a Florida port more than likely. There are other ports that will definitely get you there, but those have different issues that you have to work around as well. But the port that you leave from is very important to your overall thing. So plan on where you're wanting to go and then find which port will allow you to do that. So the next thing you need to consider is what cruise line do you want to go on? This is a big one. There are a ton of cruise lines. I got a list of them here that I'm going to read off to you, so you'll see me looking at my paper, just so I don't miss any of the big ones. But Celebrity, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, MSC, Disney, Princess, Virgin, Regent Seven Seas. That's far from all of them. That's just the ones that I am most familiar with. Each of these cruise lines has its own unique thing that makes it. Some of the cruise lines have a ton of ships, like 20 plus ships. Some of the cruise lines have just a handful of ships. Some of the cruise lines have massive ships. Some of the cruise lines have smaller ships. Some have a good variety of ships. Some of the cruise lines tend to have older ships. Some of the cruise lines tend to have the newer ships. The Virgin Voyages is a relatively new cruise line that just started around COVID time. So they are still a pretty small name in the cruise industry that's making quite a bit of a wave, pun intended. Their ships, because of that, tend to be a little newer, and especially newer on the inside. They look way more modern. Disney is a cruise line that I'm most familiar with, and it's one you'll hear me talk about all the time on my channel. Disney is they just got their 5th ship sailing not too long ago. That's the Disney Wish. They also have the Disney Dream, the Disney Fantasy, the Disney Wonder, and the Disney Magic. There is another ship getting ready to set sail at the end of this year called the Disney Treasure. We are booked to go on that cruise, or on that ship, for a cruise in 2025 in July. And then there's another ship that they have that will be more of an Asian market there. And then the Disney Wish. Disney Wish is currently the newest ship. It is the largest Disney ship in use today. The Disney Fantasy and the Disney Dream, I believe. They are the second largest group, and then the other two are smaller. The Disney Treasure will be the same size as the Disney Wish. These are more modern ships that have more modern amenities to it. Disney as a whole tends to be it is more of an elevated experience, it seems like, but it also has a higher price point to get into it. And depending on which ship you're on, the amount of Disney intensity will vary from ship to ship, and vary from different cruise itinerary to different cruise itinerary. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to have kids to go on a Disney cruise. There are plenty of people who are adults only going on a Disney cruise, and Disney does a fantastic job of making adults only sections where you have to be at least 18 or older. And they serve alcohol, for those of you who care about that. Royal Caribbean is one of, if not the most popular cruise line. It is cheaper than, say, a Disney cruise or Celebrity cruise line. Though these days it's not much cheaper, and depending on which ship you're on, it might actually be more expensive than some of the older ships in the more expensive cruise lines. And Royal Caribbean is still a very family-oriented cruise line. These cruises tend to be stuffed full of exciting things to do. These are the cruise ships that are the largest in the world. They have go-kart tracks on them. They have ice rinks that you can go ice skating on. They have rock climbing walls. They have merry-go-rounds. There's so much to do on these cruises. You could go on 5 cruises and not do everything. But that's Royal Caribbean. Carnival is like Royal Caribbean on sale, for a good way to think about it. It still has a lot of fun and exciting things to do, but it tends to be older ships for the most part. They do have new ships coming out all the time as well, but their cruises tend to be on the cheaper side. So with cruising, a lot of times you do get what you pay for. Disney is one of those things where it's kind of hit or miss for people if they think they're getting their money's worth or not for that difference. But Carnival, very few people will tell you they didn't get their money's worth on Carnival. It is a very budget-friendly cruise that you can normally find a cruise for less than $500 a person for your cruise. But there are just less amenities awarded to you because it is a cheaper cruise. I'm not going to go too much on the other cruise lines in this video, mainly because I don't know enough about them yet to speak on their behalf. I haven't got to do enough research on them at this time, and I want to make sure I do them justice later on. But this also, it would take forever to go through all of the different cruise lines that I've listed there. And again, there are even more that I don't have listed, like Cunard, for instance. With that, kind of grouped into the same category, but on its own, is the cruise ship. And some of you may be wondering why you wouldn't just lump this together, especially once you've been cruising for a few times and you start to get a few cruises under your belt. You want to start trying other experiences, or you should want to try other experiences. The first cruise you go on, unless it's a cruise that has major issues or has some sort of malfunction, you have a nasty weather event that's 1 in 1,000 occurrence, something like that, where it's newsworthy, there's a good chance that you're going to come off of that cruise having had an amazing time. And this is even if you're somebody who suffers from motion sickness, gets seasick easy and all that stuff. There's still a good chance that even if you do get sick on the ship, overall you're going to have an exciting time on that cruise. But there will also be things that you didn't really like about that cruise. Remember, on these cruise ships, there's anywhere from a couple thousand people to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 passengers on the cruise ship, and they are trying to be as entertaining for all of these people at the same time, day after day after day, pretty much uninterrupted the entirety of the year, year after year after year. So not everything will be a home run for you, but I will almost guarantee that you will find something that was exciting and that you absolutely love. Maybe it's the food, maybe it's the drinks, maybe it's the entertainment, maybe it's the room itself, maybe it's laying out by the poolside. There's so many different things. But when you go on that first ship, you have nothing to compare it to. So you might fall in love with that first ship, and your gut instinct will be, I want to go back on this ship so I know exactly what I'm getting into, instead of taking that risk and trying out a new ship or even a new cruise line and not knowing what you're getting into. But again, you've only tried out that one, and what if that first one you tried out is the worst of all of them? What if it's just the middle of all of them. It's just mediocre. You could be missing out on a cruise line or a cruise ship that completely rocks your socks. You don't know though until you try. And again, everybody has their own opinions on what they like and what they don't like. So you can't even go entirely off of other people's reviews. I've had numerous encounters where I've been told the food is lackluster, and I thought it was amazing. And then I go to a place where everybody says the food is amazing, and I go, this is not good, you know? So your experiences will be completely unique to you. Sorry. But yeah, so that's something you need to consider. Next, we have the length of the cruise. So for first-time cruisers, if you are a nervous person, you're anxious about being out on the water or anything like that, I recommend doing a 3 or 4 night cruise. This is enough to get your feet wet. You can experience it, but it's not so much that you're stuck on the ship being miserable if it isn't for you. This does not happen very often where people find themselves absolutely miserable, but it's a good way to get your feet wet. 3 and 4 night cruises are also great for those with a limited time budget or with the limited budget in general, as they are cheaper on the cruise side of things. Then you have the people who are excited about a cruise and really want to jump in. For them, I'd recommend a 5 to 7 night cruise. This gives you more time to explore the ship, and you'll quickly find out that once you get on the ship, it'll take a little bit of time to get used to it. Those 3 or 4 night cruises, just about the time you're getting used to being on the ship and getting in the rhythm, it's time to get off. With a 7 night cruise, you know, you'll take those first 3 or 4 nights getting used to the ship, getting into that rhythm of, you know, eating at a certain time, all that good stuff. And then, okay, now we're going to start actually enjoying the relaxation part of the cruise. But yeah, 5 to 7 nights for those who are excited. And then if you're a seasoned cruiser, maybe it's time to start looking at those 10 to 14 night cruises. This is where you start getting those transatlantic cruises, the trans-Pacific cruises, the cruises going down through the Panama Canal. Lots of Alaskan cruises tend to be longer cruises. These have way more at-sea days, and you are definitely going to be able to get more acquainted with the ship. These tend to be a more relaxing cruise overall as well. I personally find sea days to be more relaxing than days at ports. Days at ports, you go in with the mindset that, oh, this could be the last time I'm ever here, so I want to do as much as I can, and then you're going the entire day. And lots of the times these cruises are in hot areas and you're not drinking enough water as you should be, and by the time you get back to the ship, you're just exhausted. And then you still have to go eat dinner and, you know, go watch that evening's entertainment, which you can always skip any of that if you want to. But you feel obligated to because you paid all the money for it to be included. And you go to bed exhausted, you sleep through most of the next day, unless it's another port day. And it's just very, very tiresome. It's super engaging. It's very adventure forward, if you want it to be. Lots of people also use it for shopping. But you tend to find the more cruises people have gone on, those people tend to stop getting off at ports and staying on the cruise ship. And it's almost as if the cruise ship becomes the destination instead of the actual destinations. So going back a few, when we talked about the cruise ship, again, that's where it plays into. I forgot to mention on that, by the way, that somebody like me, one of my goals is to go on as many different cruise ships as I can. It's just, Sorry. It's just something that many of us like to do. And again, it's all about trying out those different things, seeing what's out there, having fun. Moving on to the back page. Excellent. So we went from 5 to 7 to 10 to 14. There's a group there in the 7 to 10. This length of cruise, I think, is perfect for those cruisers who are super excited. They have the ability to go on a longer cruise, and this is more of it's still a family-friendly cruise. Once you get on those 10 to 14 night cruises, you start seeing less children on there because it's hard to get kids out of school that long. And these don't tend to be during the summertime months that you see a lot of these. Or if you do, they're pretty expensive. So the 7 to 10 day cruises are about the maximum length to go on during a regular cruise and still have time for your family to go. Lots of people take a 2-week vacation, think like spring break or something like that, or holidays, Christmas time, stuff like that. This is perfect for those. All right, next we're going to talk about cabin types. Now, this is kind of a tough subject to talk about because different cruise lines call their cabins different things. You might hear the term stateroom thrown out there. Virgin Voyages has their own terminology, I think, for theirs as well. They call their passengers something unique as well. But for the most part, all cruise lines have a certain subset of cabins. Almost always, the cheapest cabins for passengers are going to be what's called an inside cabin or an inside stateroom, something along that line. And these are the cabins that are, like they sound, inside. These tend to have absolutely no windows. They're just a room with however many walls and a door to get you into the room. Now, some cruise lines have started doing cool things to some or all of their inside cabins to make it less tiny feeling. They can feel small because you have no sense of outside at all. So Disney, for instance, puts these little fake port windows up on the wall with a screen on it, a digital screen that has a camera feed of what is outside the ship. And they actually have Disney characters that'll float by throughout the day. So you can see what it looks like outside as though you had a window without actually having a window, which is kind of cool. Some of the other cruise lines do like an entire wall. So it looks like you have a big open window that you could open up if it opened and see outside, but it's just a screen. And those have pros and cons to them. And sometimes they charge more for them. Sometimes they don't work. But they do help overall with trying to make the room feel a little bit more inviting, a little bit bigger. Like I said, these rooms tend to feel small. Cruise rooms are small already. They are definitely smaller than hotel rooms of the same type of category. But that's just the nature of the beast. They need to get as many rooms on the cruise as possible so that they can fit as many people on the cruise ship as possible. And in hopefully doing that, it also keeps the cruise as cheap as possible for us while still getting them whatever profit they want to get. So those are your inside cabins. Next, we have the balcony or veranda cabins. This is my favorite. These, again, this day and age, they come in different classifications too, and each cruise line does it a little bit differently. Especially lately, we're seeing a big trend in these also. So, a balcony room, or a veranda room as they're sometimes called, is basically tends to be where you have a door that opens up from within your own stateroom, opens up to an outside area where you have free, where you have the outside air able to come in with you, all that good stuff. The way I word it that way is because nowadays some cruise lines are doing what they call an infinite view. And so this isn't an open area so much as it is just another part of the room. It's almost like they separated a larger cabin into two areas that still opens up, but now this room is almost like, kind of like a gazebo, if you are familiar with those. But it still has an opening that you can open up and have the fresh air come in for you. Then there are some with obstructed views where you might have a lifeboat blocking part of your view, that sort of stuff. Royal Caribbean has something that's kind of unique and cool. Some of their bigger cruise ships have something, I think they call it Central Park or something like that. But basically, they build a park in the center of the cruise ship. And then the rooms are on both sides of this park. And this park is open air. So if it rains, you're going to get rain inside there, all that good stuff. But they got this big park that actually has flowers and trees and plants and all that good stuff. So while they do have some veranda cabins that face out to the ocean, they also have some cabins with verandas and balconies that face into this park area, which is pretty cool all on its own. Now, it's definitely not for everybody. There are some people who don't want that look. Plus, then you also have the ability for other people to look up into your cabin as well. Again, you can always close the blinds and all that good stuff. But some people are scared of the ocean. So having a balcony that gives you the fresh air that you want, but doesn't have you facing the ocean, that can be daunting and scary for some people, especially at night, especially during thunderstorms at night. That's kind of an awesome little thing to offer. I have not got to try one of those out. I personally love looking out at the ocean. I spend so much time out on our balcony when we're on a cruise ship, just watching the ocean go by. It's super peaceful, and it's a nice way to get away from the rest of the cruise ship. But I would definitely love to try one of those inside veranda rooms. Then you have suites, and there are different categories of suites as well. They call them all different sorts of things, but in general you have like a junior suite, a grand suite, an owner's suite. On Carnival, we're staying on the Sunrise. We are staying what's called a captain suite, which is the largest category on the ship. There are two of them on our ship. And each category has its own perks that come with it as well. Lots of times the suites tend to be larger in size. It's not always the case. Lots of times the suites come with perks like spa passes or fancy dining included, all sorts of stuff like that. On Disney, the suites, with a few exceptions, don't really give you larger rooms. These are more a concierge level stuff, which gets you concierge service for a hefty price increase. But they take that already excellent quality and professionalism that they treat you with all the time and take it up to the extreme. And you are treated like absolute royalty the entire time, even before you get on the cruise until the time you're off the cruise. But again, you definitely pay for that. Then there are family rooms, which are different from suites. Especially on Disney is where I've seen these a lot. Family rooms tend to be bigger. So a normal cruise room will sleep 2 to 3 people. You might have a single bed or a bed that can split into 2, and then a couch that normally turns into some sort of sleeper sofa type thing. Then you have some rooms that will have the option for a fourth person. Sometimes it's a pull down bed or something like that. The family rooms, these will tend to sleep 5 people. And on Disney, for instance, there's actually a Murphy bed that will come down, and then the sleeper sofa, and then a bed that comes down from the ceiling. I forget what those are called, but that's 3 beds plus the main bed that sleeps 2 people. Each of those other beds sleeps 1 person. And yes, those beds do sleep adults, all of adults. I'm a very big guy, and it sleeps me just fine. Every cruise line has different comfort levels to their beds, their bedding, and most of the time the cruise lines take a lot of pride in how their rooms are. So definitely something to look into. Find out what you want, what works best for you. Sometimes you'll find that it's cheaper to get a larger room like a suite instead of getting multiple smaller rooms for the length of cruise that you're going on. So keep that in mind. And then the last category of room is accessible rooms. Now these are rooms designed for like wheelchairs and stuff like that. So they do have them on cruise ships. Unfortunately, they don't tend to have very many of them, and they do go fairly fast. But they are there. But even if you can't get a room that is accessible, definitely let the cruise line know. They'll work with you, and they'll be able to make something work for you. But those are an option. I don't know much about those, so I won't go into much more detail on that. I will say cruise lines are very wheelchair, walker accessible. The average age of a cruiser is up there, so you will see quite a few people using like electric scooters or stuff like that. It's not a bunch, but it's more than you would expect going on your first cruise. You will definitely see it, and you'll see people of all sorts. And the important thing to keep in mind is, remember, not every accessibility issue is obvious to everyone. So just keep that in mind. The last thing on our list to talk about today is pricing and budget. And I left this last for a reason. For me, at my current state in life, the budget is the first thing that I consider. I set a budget, and then I find a cruise that fits that budget. For other people, where money is less of an issue, that might not be the case. You might really want to go on an Alaskan cruise, and you're going to go on it no matter how much it costs. For me, I have a set budget that I need to be at or under. If I can go on that dream cruise that I want to go on, excellent. If I can't, I would rather go on a cruise than not go on a cruise. So that for me is the most important thing to consider. Again, other people, it might not even be a consideration at all. But every single one of the other 7 points will be a part of that budget. From where you cruise out of, how long your cruise is, where you're cruising to, what type of room you get, what cruise line you're on, what cruise ship you're on, the timing that you go on the cruise. All 7 of those will be a key part of figuring out how much your cruise is going to cost overall. Again, I will say, cruising out of the popular ports during off-season times, during hurricane season, for instance, going to a popular destination on a cruise ship that is shorter in length, staying in an inside cabin on an older ship will tend to get you the cheapest fare that you can get. When you start changing stuff like going to more obscure destinations, going on longer trips, going closer to holidays, getting into the bigger, better rooms, that's when the pricing starts to go up. And these prices can vary wildly. You're talking anywhere from less than $200 for a person for the entire cruise to more than $30,000 per person for a single cruise. Prices can vary wildly. Prices will change every single day. Most of these cruise lines will always have some sort of special that makes it look like it's a you gotta book now or you're never gonna see this special again. They always have specials going on. They want to book every single room, every single cruise, and they will do whatever they can to book those rooms. However, the cheapest time to book a cruise is the instant that cruise is available to be booked. After that, cruises tend to get more expensive as they fill up. This will continue all the way until right before the cruise. Then the prices will drop dramatically. And if you can go on a last minute cruise, sometimes you can get really good deals. But most of the time, the people who can do that are people who have absolute flexibility, lots of disposable income that can pay everything up front right then, right there, and people who live close to the cruise port that these are cruising out of. So if you live in Florida and you're retired and you're wealthy, you can find a last minute cruise almost all the time, and they're going to be cheap. For almost everybody else, you want to book as soon as you can on the cruise that you want to book on. If the cruise prices ever get cheaper, there are ways to rebook for a cheaper cost. But that's why you need a travel agent. They will help you with that. The last thing I'll say in this video is that the only other thing that I did not include in this list, because it's not just a part of this list, it is part of travel in general, whether you're flying, cruising, whatever, travel insurance. It sounds like it's not something that you will need, and lots of people never have to use it. But if you ever end up being a person who does need to use travel insurance and you don't have it, it will be very painful. Travel insurance is not that expensive, but it saves you a world of hurt when things go wrong. And things going wrong could be something as simple as your flight to get you to your cruise got canceled and now you missed your cruise. That's nothing you have control over. Travel insurance will help you out. Not having travel insurance, you don't get a refund. You're out the entire cost of your cruise. Talk to a travel agent about that. That's something you'll have to do your own research on, because every travel agent or every travel insurance is different and covers different things, and you need it to be good for you and your use case scenario each time that you're using it. There is plans that you can get that cover all things all the time, like you just keep paying monthly like you would health insurance, stuff like that. But for the most part, we tend to do one travel insurance for each of the travels that we're doing. And again, some will include your flights, some will include your luggage, some will include full refunds, some will include health, some will include if things are canceled because of weather. Not all of them cover everything. Some of them just cover a couple of those. So make sure you do your research. Maybe down the road I can do a video that goes more into detail about that as well. But that's not something I'm super familiar with right now. I trust my travel agents to help me get the right stuff when I'm looking for that. Well, that being said, thank you. I am going to go ahead and end this now. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you learned at least something. This is the first part, and then I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.